Hi, I'm Andy Ramirez, President and founder of the Law Enforcement Officers Advocates Council. Welcome to the Andy Ramirez Report. This should be episode 12. In this report, I'm going to address the Senate proposals on illegal immigration and the so-called enforcement or amnesty that they say is coming out. Now, first and foremost, this legislation and this deal between the Dems as well as Republicans Lindsey Graham, John McAmnesty, and Marco Rubio, it's entirely fool's gold, loaded with fool's gold. It's nothing that actually works. Let me put it this way. To try to enact this type of legislation, put yourself as a fan of, say, football. And I say that with the Super Bowl upon us. And you go out and hire, whichever coach you think is the hot name, or somebody who has this reputation for being this great offensive mind or defensive mind. Ultimately, the bottom line is you still have to put the players out in the field. You can come up with whatever you want and whatever game plan, but it still takes players to execute whatever game plan that is put into play. Now, that's part of the problem we see with this. Most of the rest of the problem focuses on a simple fact. We have no immigration enforcement, and we haven't had immigration enforcement. The Department of Homeland Security can continue to come out and say, yes, we're apprehending, our numbers are increasing, but are these actual numbers or the same doctored book numbers that we have seen? Because their numbers have been skewered for years. The numbers that have come out of Homeland Security, specifically through U.S. Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, as well as Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, are absolutely nonsense. They're preposterous and they're doctored. Now, if we look at this era, going back to 2004, what I can tell you is it's a joke. You can claim that X, Y, and Z is going to happen, just as these coaches do as they're putting their plans together, but it takes agents in the field. It takes the will to enforce. The agents have the will, but not their managers. Not the David Aguilars, the former chief of the Border Patrol who remains acting commissioner or CBP deputy commissioner. There's no will there. Just as there hasn't been will from the Barack Hussein Obama administration, just as there wasn't with the George W. Bush administration. So in dealing with this utter nonsense, we come into this additional side. Then what is the real purpose for this? Well, it's just hispandering for votes. Not pandering, hispandering. Because all of the talk since the 2012 election, which resulted in the re-election of Barack Hussein Obama, it has been, well, the Republican Party was rejected for the immigration policy, and that's just an absolute load of crap. The fact of the matter is, it wasn't just that. It was yet another bad candidate, a very weak candidate, who was seen by the conservatives as to be someone who was a flip-flopper, not solid on issues, and never really was the conservative candidate. He was the GOP establishment candidate. And the rank and file conservatives are fed up with that. Most conservatives are sick and tired of holding their noses to vote, because there hasn't been a true conservative candidate in some time. And the second that they get immediately pounded on. But this isn't about that. The GOP establishment thinks by playing the amnesty game and the so-called pathway to citizenship, it's going to give them votes. But look at the individuals and the countries that they are coming from. These are not supporters of the United States. These are not friends of the United States. People that come across from Canada, well, guess what? Most of them know the words to the U.S. national anthem and speak English and are damn proud of it. You look at the people coming over from Europe. The people who are interested in becoming Americans do it the legal way, assimilate, and they do everything as they should. They honor a time-honored tradition. Legal immigration does work. But the way that it's being done is an absolute joke. What we're saying with the Rubio, McAmnesty, and Lindsey Graham proposal is that it's okay to break the law. You will face no consequence because we're going to put you on a pathway to citizenship. And it's dependent upon the Department of Homeland Security having successfully with this so-called enforcement first mentality. They're claiming that it will result, once that is done, then we can move to this. No, it doesn't work before. It's not going to work now. And the reason it doesn't work, it's back to what I've said all along. There is no will. Now, we take a look beyond that. The politics of this, they think this is going to result in votes. We know what economically they tell us. But that gets back to what I've testified going back to 2006 in Capitol Hill, when I've testified before Foreign Affairs Judiciary under oath, I might add, unlike recent testimony by Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, as well as the House Homeland Security Committee. And the bottom line is, I have stated on record that the U.S. government is more concerned with trade and commerce than national security. So when you're basically allowing this system to result in not enforcement, but in a pathway to citizenship, you've not only made a mockery of your immigration system, but you've opened it up to who, God knows who, to come into this country. We have plenty of enemies of the United States of America and our people that will come in and have been coming in from the Middle East and other countries as well. People who do not have good intentions. People who are not interested in assimilating, in becoming Americans, in participating with American society. No, there are people with intentions of selling and distributing narcotics, engaging in human trafficking, and engaging in other criminal acts, as well as acts of terrorism. Now, there are a number of forms of terrorism. You have domestic terrorism, and which, of course, is being done through the subversive agents of Mexico and other places. And then you have, the outright 9/11s. The problem is, once again, we don't know who's coming in. We don't know what their roles are. We don't know what they're doing. Background checks. How can you run a background check on a person who doesn't exist, who comes in with phony IDs, who we have no information on? It's like the Border Patrol agents used to tell me, and by the way, this is a correction for the public. They're not border guards people at Fox News or CNN or in the daily newspapers or elsewhere. They're not border guards. This isn't Germany. This isn't Europe. Our Border Patrol has an honored tradition, and it's embodied by the words honor first. They are agents of the United States Border Patrol, or Border Patrol agents. They were patrol inspectors in earlier days. They're patrol agents today. They can try to change the terminologies to make it seem this way or that way, but it's crap. Border Patrol agents, honor first. Remember those terms. Now, back to the point. So, they think that it's okay to put up this type of legislation, that the American people are going to say it's okay. They think that they're going to get these votes. These Hispanic votes are going to suddenly go and become Republican votes. Mexico is a socialist country. Mexico has been a socialist country for decades. It is a socialist country. You may have had Vicente Fox in there, but who worked more against the American government than our so-called friend, Vicente Fox? He was no friend, any more than Felipe Calderon has been, any more than any president of the PRI has been. None of them have been friends of the United States. When did a Mexican soldier stand next to an American soldier in the Battle of Guadalcanal, in the Battle of Tarawa, at the Battle of the Bulge, or on the beaches of Normandy? When did they stand next to us in Korea? When did they stand next to us in the Persian Gulf? Part 1 or Part 2? Have they stood next to us in Afghanistan? I see a lot of Americans dying, and I'm very aware of Canadians that are dying. Canadians have always died next to Americans in battle, going back how many years? You have Polish soldiers dying next to Americans in battle, but are Mexico supposed to be our neighbor and friend? They're the hostile neighbor that you can't wait to get the hell out of the neighborhood because they're screwing it up for the rest of you. That is the Mexican government. They're not a friend of the United States of America. Rather than pandering or hispandering to their government, Mexico, we got to remember, is a nation who enforces their immigration laws. So what we need to do is tell them to stop meddling in U.S. affairs. You know, there was a Federal Bureau of Investigation special agent in charge named Hardrick Crawford Jr. Now, Sack Crawford was prosecuted by former U.S. Attorney Johnny Sutton. And why? Well, because the Mexican government wanted him prosecuted because he was looking into the femicides, the murders of hundreds of women by the cartels in Juarez, Mexico. So they wanted him prosecuted for meddling into Mexican affairs. And George W. Bush and Johnny Satan sure gave him that. They put his scalp on the platter like they did a number of others. Now, rather than hispandering and kissing Mexico's backside, why don't we tell them to stop meddling into American affairs and bleep off? You know, that would give us a hell of a lot more credibility among our own people. Why is it that Mexico can enforce their immigration laws, and let's face it, they don't do it with politeness, parense, stop, alto, none of that stuff. They shoot people in Mexico. They put them in jail, and their jail isn't like a U.S. jail. They basically put them in a place where they're going to have the hell beat out of them, where they're going to be exploited, and it's not going to be fun, and the person will most likely die. They don't wind up like they do in the United States, where they're well taken care of once they're taken into custody, processed, and looked for their well-being. Now, that doesn't happen over there. So, how about Mexico starts looking out for their own issues and let us take care of our own up here in the United States? Finally, Senator Rubio, Senator John McCain, and Senator Lindsey Graham. You know, Graham and McAmnesty, we know where they've stood. I think McAmnesty's always been somebody who got into that position because his father and grandfather were legends in the U.S. Navy. Well, what was his legendary exploit, John Sidney McCain? The Hanoi Hilton? Yeah, many Americans were there, but you've exploited that. You've been in the U.S. Senate for far too long. And yes, God bless you for what you had to deal with and the disabilities that you have been left with. But that doesn't make you a great American in my point of view, especially when you're continuing to sell us out to the lowest bidder, in this case, Mexico and Red China. No, I've had just about enough of these clowns. But now you have a senator like Marco Rubio, who so many conservatives are saying it's our next great hope. Bullshit! You are not a great hope when you're coming up with a pathway to citizenship solely because you can think you can play a political game to gain votes for a Republican Party. Oh, I've participated in this. They don't vote Republican. Let me say it again. They don't vote Republican. Historically, they don't vote Republican. They're coming from socialist countries with socialist training and socialist thoughts and socialist ideas. And look at the communities like Los Angeles, like San Antonio, like San Francisco, like Santa Ana, California. How ironic, considering, look at the birth of Texas. General Santa Ana, California. Correlation there? Look at all this nonsense that's taken place. Now look at some of, if you just take a look at this in general, you'll realize it's time to put a stop to these amnesties. It's time to stop talking to the National Council of La Razas, the George Lopez's, the Jessica Albas, the Eva Longorias, these leftist socialist assholes. And basically start talking to people like me who have traveled the U.S.-Mexico border from the bullfight ring to Laredo, Texas, and say, Andy, what have you seen? Go to a friend of mine, Carmen, out in the East, and ask her what she has seen. Talk to friends, and I'm using that just as a point of reference since I'm in the West and I've got friends in the East. Talk to people along the U.S.-Mexico border. Stop talking to the people who skewer numbers and talk to the retired Border Patrol chiefs, because those people will tell you the facts. Enough is enough. No to amnesty. It's time to put a stop to this, and in the future, stop voting in these clowns like Lindsey Graham, John McAmnesty, and Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio, you're not on the list of a person I support for any office when you offer pathway to citizenship and you play this game. You have lost my vote, sir. Stay tuned for more reports because we will continue to follow this up.